because we have a ruling party member on the phone right now, Mr. Reda, member of the National Democratic Party, joining us on the line from Cairo. Thank you very much for speaking to us. I'm just going to ask you first, President Mubarak is appointing a vice president. He's never done so in the 30 years that he's been in power. Why is he doing this now?
The nation won't reform.
Mr. Boutros, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you well.
Yes, I was just asking you why this appointment, why a vice president that Egypt has never had in 30 years? Why now?
Well, this is one of the demands of the people. The people want a reform, including a vice president.
The people want
Egypt.
reform. This wasn't a demand from the people. The people are demanding that the president stand down. He's appointing a vice president instead. This is not what the people are asking for.
Well, the president and the political regime is elected. So if you want to throw an elected president, you have to do it through the legitimate way, through elections as well. So what we're doing now, he is trying to respond to the demands of people, including a reform again. This reform might not be changing faces. The reform might be introducing new changes. So Mr. Omar Salman is one of the acceptable faces in Egypt. So it does not mean that he delayed it all those years, which is something we demanded that we had a vice president. If he does it now, I mean, it does not mean it's too late.
And Mr. Boutros, you say Mr. Suleiman is one of the acceptable faces in Egypt, certainly one of the credible ones. But my question is, he's the vice president. Mr. Mubarak is still going to be running the show, and that's not going to be enough for Egyptian people.
Who said?
So what powers then is this new vice president going to have? Do explain to us, please.
The vice president, according to the constitution, has his authorities delegated by the president. There are no, according to the constitution, there are no definite authorities for the president, like United States.
So are you telling me right now on Al Jazeera that President Hosni Mubarak is relinquishing some of his powers to this new vice president, Omar Suleiman?
I did not say that.
Okay.
What I said is that the Constitution does not specify specific functions and authorities for the president, for the vice president. The vice president has his authorities delegated to him by the president. So the president, if he wants to delegate some of his authorities to the vice president, he would do that. We have to wait till we see the president of Egypt delegating what authorities to his new vice president. That's what I said.
But you have to understand that this is probably not going to be enough for Egyptian people, because Hosni Mubarak is still going to be at the helm.
Well, he is an elected president. I'm stating this right now again. He's
an elected president who's been in power for 30 years, sir.
So now, the Egyptian constitution, like the French constitution, does not specify how many rounds the president should stay, like the prime minister in England. So,
well, we certainly haven't seen a prime minister stay in power for 30 years in England, have we?
Well, if he's elected for 30 years, if you remember, Margaret Thatcher has stayed more than 10 years.
Right.
Simply because it's upon the demand of people.
But yeah,
so
but Margaret Thatcher was thrown out of power democratically. The Egyptian people today are asking that the president leave. So why won't he heed that call?
Well, if he feels that it's not the role of mobs would demand this, and I stated earlier.
But these are not mobs on the streets of Egypt, Mr. Boutros.
Let me state this. As I stated earlier in an earlier interview with Jazeera International, I stated that the mobs, when they demand for any president or any head of state to leave, then there will be no head of state on the top of power.
But these are not mobs. Again, these are not mobs on the streets of Egypt. From what we've been seeing, these are ordinary Egyptians with grievances, men, women, and children taking to the streets. How could you possibly describe them as mobs?
The mobs now are looting the stores, looting the places, burning down places. These are the mobs.
You say that, but when we look at pictures of Tahrir Square, tens of thousands of people are gathered there peacefully. You can't say that all these people are mobs and are looting government buildings and so on. More than 100 people have been killed. How do you explain that?
If you allow me, at the beginning of the 25th of January, there were all genuine people, genuine demands to change. We did listen to this. When the mobs came in and manipulated those demonstrations, now it became mobs. Hundreds of people are looting and burning down. If you respond, you never know who is looting and who is genuine Egyptian citizens who demand their rights.
Right. Well, you know, we could argue about that for hours, but let me just ask you another question, Mr. Boutros. President Hosni Mubarak is now again appointing a vice president for the first time. Can you give us any indication as to whether the president is planning to stand in elections in September? Is this a sign that he's not going to be presenting himself in those elections?
Well, I wish I was in the inner circle to give you a clear answer to your question, but the only person who decides on this is the president. And if he runs for another election, that's his own decision, not us. But I believe that any elected president, when he leaves office, he leaves upon the electoral votes, not demonstrations asking for him to leave, because he came to power by elections.
He came to power by elections. I'm sorry, I'm going to just interrupt you again there, and I apologize for this. You say he came to power through elections, but we know of the mobs who were participating in those elections, forcing people to vote Mubarak and so on. You spoke of mobs earlier taking to the streets of Cairo. If there were any mobs, it was certainly during those elections, weren't there?
Well, these are allegations.
Well, so, yeah, you say it's allegations, yet you say that it's mobs taking to the streets of Egypt. When we see those pictures, I have to disagree with you, sir.
Well, there is always room for disagreement when we're talking about politics. Now, we have. Can you deny that there are mobs throughout Cairo, burning every part of Cairo, looting? Haven't you seen these?
There has been looting, certainly, but you can't describe the entire Egyptian population as mobs.
No. I'm one of those population. I'm one of the Egyptian citizens. I do not call our people as mobs. Those mobs who lead the demonstrations now, lead them to burn, to loot. When you have a noble cause at the beginning, you have to sustain it. Well, you don't convert into violence.
100 people have been killed. Certainly there's been violence, but when we look at the pictures of Tahrir Square today, it's been largely peaceful. So I'm sorry, sir, I just don't agree with you on that point, but we're going to let you go now. Thank you very much for coming on Al Jazeera and reacting there to the appointment of Mr. Omar Suleiman as the new vice president.
Thank you.
That's Reda Boutros on the line there with us from Cairo, a member of the ruling National Democratic Party.